Facebook, how's it going? It's Thursday morning, despite my best efforts. I was really hoping that it would be Friday. No, it's not Friday yet. I wish that it was Friday. I think we all can agree to the I wish it was Friday sentiment. I feel like the last few weeks, the first weeks of January period, have been so slow. And I think part of that is just industry-wide for like writers and stuff. Not a lot happens in January. The publishing houses and everybody are still kind of recovering from the last year. They're getting ready to do taxes, starting up fiscal stuff, so there's not a lot of movement in a lot of things. It's a slow time for the industry, and so it's a slow time for authors, and a lot of us are coming off of our like holiday vacations, and so jumping back in January is a little hard. I think things go a little slower in January. That's just me, and I don't like slow, which makes me in the way wrong industry, because everything about publishing is painfully slow. Oh, hi, Katie. Thanks. Oh, she likes my hair today. Thank you. Thank you. I took an extra 5 minutes with the curling iron instead of just straightening it today, so it's like doing a little bouncy thing, which is always fun. Let's see. I wanted to talk about a couple of things today. You may have heard some noise going on May pages and a couple of the other author pages about the New York Times, and particularly the New York Times bestsellers list. I wanted to sort of drop a little information on you sort of about how those bestseller lists work. I did a blog post about this a couple months ago, and if you're curious for details, you can go to the blog post. But basically, there are, half a dozen different bestseller lists. Good morning, Kathy. And each of them is calculated a little bit differently, which is why a book that might hit the USA Today list doesn't hit the New York Times list, and vice versa. Most of the bestseller lists are based strictly on sales, whether it be ebook or print or a combination of both, whether it's through Amazon or indie stores or a combination of both. Most of the bestseller lists are calculated on sales. That makes sense, right? If you're a bestseller, calculated on sales. Hey, June. So when the New York Times list comes out and it's got the bestsellers on it, they don't actually calculate based on sales. It's a very strange, very proprietary method that they use to calculate. And a matter of fact, it's so secret that they won't even tell you how they calculate it, which feels a little shady to me. Like, let's be real. It feels a little shady. I don't know how they calculate bestsellers, but I have seen books that haven't hit shelves yet hit a bestseller list based on anticipated sales. It's very sketchy. And last year, they were like, okay, great, so we're going to do not just our main list, which is calculated by our secret magical formula, but we're going to do an ebook list and a YA list and a nonfiction list and all these other sort of individual lists in categories, which not only gave authors a better chance to list, but most of those categories were then based solely on sales. So it sort of made it a little bit more fair, if that makes sense. Well, they announced recently, not publicly yet, but to most of the big publishing houses and to a lot of the agencies, that they are doing away with those other lists. Like, they're just doing their main list again. And I think the announcement on that's coming soon. And a lot of indie people were really upset. And here's why. Because it feels like, not necessarily an attack, but it feels like once again we're playing in an uneven field. We're once again playing in a place that we can't really compete. And this came on the heels of like some Huffington Post articles that were like, ebooks aren't real books and indie authors are a disgrace to publishing. And let's be real, that's all crap. You readers know that ebooks are books, books are books, writers are writers are writers are writers. And you can't, in good conscience, say that because someone is self-published or because someone is small press published, they are less qualified or less talented or less successful than someone that's traditionally published. I feel like that's a really unfair comparison. So when we hear these things coming in the industry, oh, we're cutting these lines and going back to our super secret, formula for calculating our winners, it feels like a slight. It feels like a slight. So I did a little digging and talked to some of my author friends, some industry friends, and apparently the New York Times isn't just cutting these lists. Apparently the New York Times is struggling a little bit in today's sort of digital media world. It's not a surprise. They've had to not only cut some lists, they've cut a lot of jobs. I've heard rumor that they've closed a couple floors of their building. Like, they're cutting back. They're cutting back the fat to try and save themselves. And of course, when times are tough, that's what you have to do. You have to make cutbacks. And it's a shame that this is where they've decided to make those cutbacks. And it seems to me like, you know, one of those things that's like, it's cutting off your hand to spite your face. It's making you even less relevant in a market where you're already struggling. And I think that's never a good idea. The best lists, if you're curious, like if you want to see like legitimate bestsellers, USA Today list is great. Calculated on sales. It's very fair, very even. You'll see a good mixture of traditional and indie. The Publishers Weeklies list, even the Amazon and Smashwords lists are very good to calculate, you know, who's selling best over a particular period. Now, again, these are all very flighty because they change every week, and a really good advertisement in a sale can drive a book onto a list or off of a list that, you know, wouldn't necessarily be there otherwise. But it gives you, I think, a really fair and accurate gauge of what's selling well in the market. So if you're curious about a bestseller list, I'm going to point you to the USA Today list. It's probably the most accurate sales-wise of all of the bestseller lists. Washington Post, too. Washington Post is actually owned by the parent company that owns Amazon. So it's going to be really interesting to see how they sort of step up and fill the gap that the New York Times is leaving by sort of pushing away these smaller lists. And you probably don't care about any of that. Just a little bit of industry news, a little bit of what's going on. So if you see somebody complaining about the New York Times, that's probably what they're talking about. It's probably, you know, just a little bit of frustration about this this change that's being made. So I want to talk about that just a little bit today. June wants to know what's on the back of my chair. Okay, this is, you've probably seen this in previous videos. This is my... So, fun fact, a lot of authors really worry about, like, their search histories, and like, oh my gosh, am I gonna get, you know, called by the NSA for looking up, you know, how to chop up a dead body or whatever. It's not actually the search that will get you. As someone who has been called by Homeland Security, hi Bob, it's when you start actually purchasing things that it becomes an issue. So I was, I had just finished Losing Logan and we were getting ready to make the video trailer, which I had some really talented people helping me out with the video trailer, and we needed some supplies for the video trailer. So in the course of one afternoon, I had been researching, this is going to sound really terrible, I'd been researching pressure cookers because I garden, and my friends were like, oh, if you're going to can green beans, you need a pressure cooker. So I was researching pressure cookers, so I had ordered a pressure cooker, and then I was researching, can you get sick from eating human flesh, which was a research question for book research. And then I went and bought like 3 body bags and some crime scene tape and this, and they were all for the filming of the trailer, but that magical combination of things in a short period of time got me a call. So, and they were super nice, and they were just like, hey, you know, we were just checking, we wanted to make sure this was you, that somebody hadn't hijacked your IP address, blah, blah, blah. And I just explained it was me, I was a writer, these are what these things are for, and they were totally legit, like they were fine. Really nice about it. But it is not the search history that will get you, it is actually purchasing things like body bags online that apparently will get you a call from Homeland Security. So, word to the wise, don't use your mother-in-law's Amazon account to order body bags online. Katie says this is amazing. I have the best stories, Katie. You're gonna learn this eventually, that I have really weird luck, if you can call it luck. So like when I'm traveling for conventions or stuff, like people are always like, you have the best stories, because the weirdest things happen to me. Without fail, without hesitation, the weirdest things happen to me. Remind me to tell you about the sketchy Korean massage parlor we ended up in Houston once. That's a heck of a story. I wanted to talk really quick too. Most of you know that during my day job, I read acquisitions for Crimson Tree and Clean Teen Publishing. I'm one of the acquisitions team members. So basically you submit a book, it comes to the team, we all read it, sort of make our recommendations and decisions, and we have hit some real winners lately. I was really pleased. We've had a couple come in that I was like super excited about after just the first 15 pages, which is really rare to get like a lot in a short amount of time. Like normally you go through and you know, maybe 1 or 2 a quarter will really strike you, but we've got a really good run lately, which is nice. But I wanted to talk a little bit about 2 things. 1, a trend that I'm noticing, and 2, well, a trend that I've been recently told we should be avoiding. So for those authors looking to submit, I'm going to start with the avoidance. With indie publishing, with small press publishing, it's like, it's kind of a different beast than publishing with the big five when we're talking about trends, because they say, oh, vampires are so done and over. Small presses still want vampires because we know that there's always a market for that. There's always going to sell. Paranormal romance isn't going anywhere. There's always a market for great books. And while indies are able to take a broader variety of books because we don't have the overhead and we don't have, this pressure of an advance, it's different for the big five. They have to really only take what they are positive they can sell at a certain level, and we don't have to be quite as rigid with what we take. So the things that I'm told that the major publishers aren't looking for anymore are anything with like ocean or sea or water like themes. So like pirate stuff is kind of over. The Peter Pan retellings are kind of over. Those sort of water themed, I guess, books are kind of over. Mermaids are kind of over. For the bigger publishers. Again, I feel like if I saw a submission come in tomorrow that was like a pirate and mermaid story, I'd be like all over it. If it was really well written, I don't think that would matter to me either way. But so those are sort of the trends that they're like, oh, we're not taking really any more of these right now. And we do watch those just because it helps us know what's going to be coming out down the pipeline. So if we have a Peter Pan retelling and we know that there's 6 other Peter Pan retellings about to hit, we have to look at it and say, can this title compete against these? Because they're all going to be releasing at about the same time. Another thing that I've seen coming through my acquisitions desk that I just want to talk to some of the authors about real quick is it's very tempting to finish a book and be super excited about it and then like pay someone to create your cover and to do all these things. Don't do that. 99% of the time is going to be a waste of your money unless you are really set on self-publishing. This is not going to be something that you want to do. You're going to want to let your publisher do that for 2 reasons. Hold on one second. Sorry, my screen is being really weird all of a sudden. Your publishing house has a team, usually of cover artists, of people who know the market a little bit better than you probably do about, what's going to sell. Fun fact, I didn't know this until I actually got my first agent. If you put a dog on a book cover, it sells like 30% better. It sounds ridiculous. But it's one of those things that professionals in the industry know and most lay people don't. In addition to that, we can't take a cover that you have paid for because we need special formatting, we need ebook, we need print, we need audio, we need all these different ways to have the cover, and we need copyright control of the cover. She says, what's the name of your indie publishing company? Yes, CTP, Clean Teen Publishing, and Crimson Tree Publishing, which is our adult and new adult imprint. So while it's fun, like if you are decent at Photoshop and you're like, oh, I'm gonna mock up a cover, I like do it because I think that that's fun for you to have as inspiration. You see my vision boards behind me. I tend to do a lot of very visually oriented stuff. I react better visually, so a lot of times I will mock up or have a friend of mine mock up like a fake cover for something that I'm working on just to kind of keep me involved with it. But don't then try and be like, I'm only gonna, publish with this company if they take this cover, because you're cutting yourself off at the knees. Normally, the publisher's going to be able to come up with a cover that's as good or better. They will pay for it. You don't have to pay for it. So bonus, and copyright is hugely important. If you come to me with a cover and I can't verify that the stock used has the right release information or that we have the right licenses on all of it, we can't legally use it because we could get our asses sued off. So just one of those things going in, it's very tempting to be like, oh, here's my book, and here's the cover for my book, and here's all the quote art for my book, and all of these things. And I totally get that because I'm an over-preparer. So I'll be half done with a book and already marketing in my brain, like where am I going to sell this, and when do I want this done, and what do I want this to look like. It's very tempting to do that. Let your publishing house handle it. I promise you, it'll save you a lot of heartache in the long run. Sharon says, which is why she might play with a cover idea to keep you excited and use it on your Pinterest board or whatever. Yes, do that. Absolutely. Use it as a, while you're shopping, if you want to be talking about it on social media, like not official cover, but this is what I'm working on, and get people excited about it. Absolutely do that. As long as you have all the copyright stuff taken care of. But it's unrealistic to expect a publishing house to take your cover. And it's kind of a rookie move. As you're in the industry more, you sort of realize what you should and shouldn't and can and can't bring to the table, and there are certain things that you have to be like, you know, I realize that this is going to be something that's not in my control, and you have to be okay with that. There's nothing quite as scary from a publisher's perspective as an author who wants to do everything themselves, because it makes us wonder how well you're going to be able to work with our team, because it is a team. It's a huge team of people, editors, artists, beta readers, bloggers, and we need to know that you're a team player, that you can work with everybody else and incorporate other ideas and see sort of beyond, you know, just what you want. I will tell you, I have been happier with my covers when a lot of times my cover writers will come to me and say, what's your vision for the book? And I'll come up with something, and they'll give me exactly what I asked for, and it's freaking awful. It's not going to work at all. And I realize as soon as I see it, like, this is not going to work at all. So if I can step back and say, like, these are sort of the themes of the book, this is what my main characters look like, come up with something. Then I get covers that are like the cover for the Queen series. The Queen books were all done. I had like all these weird ideas for covers, and she mocked up a couple and they were terrible. And I was like, just do it. Just do what you think. And she came back with this cover that was breathtakingly beautiful and stunning, and nothing like what I would have imagined. So absolutely. Katie says, make sure you use legally obtained imagery, even if you're mocking stuff up. Yes, because you can't put anything online with like your logo or brand on it that you just pulled off of Google, because you don't own the rights to that. I will occasionally, you'll see a couple like celebrity pictures, Sergey, back here on my board. I use those only for my vision boards. I will never post that online. I will never put, you know, quote art on top of it from one of my books, because that is really, really, really illegal, and you really shouldn't be doing that. And I see particularly indie authors or first-time authors that are pretty bad about that. They'll take like a picture of a well-known celebrity and throw a quote from their book over it and market it. You're really not allowed to do that, and you can get yourself in a lot of trouble. So do yourself a favor and don't do that. It's bad. Let's see, what else happened this week? So Monday, I got up. Oh, I wanted to show you guys quick my new vision board because it's fabulous. So, bless my husband. I usually have one vision board up at a time in my room because I don't have a lot of space in my office. But I like to have a vision board for every project I work on. So normally they're like stacked against the wall on the floor of my office, and I kind of pull it out and pin it up to the wall as I'm working on it and switch it out. This is really cool. It's like, it's on sliders. So I can have 4 going at a time on whatever I'm working on. So I can have as many books in my head as I want. So like today, I'm not actually working on the Queen book. Today I'm working on the Hacker book. So the Hacker board goes up today, which is really, really fun. Angelica says, I once saw a book trailer where someone had made entirely of grabs from the Veronica Mars show. Oh, yeah. And you know, it's so tricky when you're working particularly on videos like YouTube. Sometimes they'll let you like steal snippets of a show if you're promoting the show and creating like a fan art for the show that you're using. Sometimes they'll let you get away with that, but it is still like a copyright issue. And you certainly can't use something like that to sell something of yours. Like that's when it like really crosses a line. And yeah, and Katie says, in copyright law, there's no such thing as but I didn't know. They don't care if you knew or not. You still broke the law. Yeah, so whether you know it's illegal or not, you're getting in trouble. There was a photographer online I read about who had some images that were stolen, and the person that stole them was like, well, there was no copyright on it, and I didn't know, and it didn't matter because you're still not allowed to do that. It's still against the law, which is interesting. I actually had a conversation with my husband about something like this recently. Like, we go through schooling and sort of graduate, and we're expected at 18 to follow the laws of the land, but they never actually teach us what the laws of the land are. Like, we know the basics, like don't steal from people, don't kill people, but like the minor laws, like how are you supposed to know? In an industry like this, if you don't know, ask, Google it, look it up, but for the most part, you're just going to need to be aware that copyright is an issue. Don't steal other people's stuff. Katie likes my sliders. I love my sliders. They're so fun. I'm a fan of the sliders. So I think that my father-in-law actually built them for my mother-in-law. For her, she like did genealogy work, but she recently redid her office, and then I got them, so my husband put them up for me. And I love them so much. Happy, happy author. But so Monday I got up and I opened up the hacker file. I had lost my laptop a couple months ago. My old laptop died. I got a new laptop. I transferred everything over. And one of the things I transferred over was the file that had about 15,000 words on the new hacker book completed in it that I had kind of written and set aside while I was working on other stuff. And I opened it to work on it a little bit, and the file was empty. And I think what happened was when I transferred from the old computer to the new computer, it like transferred the file image, but not the data that was inside the file. And by that time, of course, the old laptop's been scrapped, and the USB drives have been wiped and reused, and it's always soul-crushing when you lose that much work. 15,000 words doesn't sound like a lot, but that's easily, 2 weeks of work on a title. And worst of all, I'd written it far enough in the past that I didn't quite remember where I was going with it. Kitty says, "Oh no, hackers!" I wish. I actually called a friend of mine who's very tech savvy and was like, "Help, help!" And he's like, "Well, I can probably pull it off the old hard drive for you if you still have it," but I don't. So, it was an issue. It was a problem. So now I'm rewriting. So that's what I'm doing this week and weekend and into next week as I'm working on the 4th hacker book. I was really trying hard to finish up the Queen book. I have the fast draft of the Queen book just about buttoned up. It's got some plot issues I have to go back through and rework. As you know, a friend of mine has a great quote about this, that writing is like shoveling sand into a sandbox so that you can make castles later. And I think that's really true, especially when you're fast drafting. It's just a matter of getting the ideas out of your head and onto paper, and they're very rough, and they're very ugly, and they're very unpolished, and then you go back. Writing is rewriting. Writing is taking what you have and working it into something that's really fantastic. And it's hard. It's unbelievably hard to get out that fast draft and then be able to go back and look at it with any kind of like objectivity. So you kind of have to give yourself some time in between finishing the fast draft, work on something else for a little while, and then go back and polish and edit it, because you need to be able to get out of that headspace for a little while so you can see the flaws. Yay, Queen! Yeah, I know, the new Queen book's fabulous. You guys are going to freaking die. I love it. But I do want to get the new hacker book out too. It's going to be a lot of fun to work on. And particularly, we're in a very politically charged climate right now. Any of you are obviously on Facebook and are probably seeing the multitude of political posts. Whichever way you lean, it's inescapable. It's all over. And so it's got me in a really good headspace to be working on the hacker book, because the story sort of falls in line with like this sort of big brother government issue that we're sort of talking about right now in social media. So it's going to be really fun for me to write on that for a little while and then go back and finish the draft of the Queen book, because you have to write, as a writer, you have to write sort of what's talking to you and what's in front of your head, and there's always a battle. Like I said, I have 4 revisions boards because I have, usually at least 2 or 3 books in my head at a time, and inevitably there will be one voice that's louder than the others. And no matter what else is happening, you have to be able to listen to the voice that's talking, because that's where your focus is going to be best served. Sharon says, she's so sick of it, but it does generate ideas for us writerly types. That's true. I know the politics are boring. I know they're horrible. I had a really hard time. We were launching the first of the novelettes for the Canary Club novelettes. We were releasing them in November, right before the election, and everything got drowned. The release totally kind of bombed just because we couldn't get visibility, we couldn't get the word out, we couldn't get anything. Every post we did, every blog we went to was eaten up with political stuff. Hi, Jen. And it made it really hard, to get any kind of visibility. And even now, authors are still dealing with that because there's so much focus on the political climate that books that are releasing right now are having a really hard time just getting visibility. It's eating everything else up. It's so hard. Amber says she recommends to all authors to get a cloud device to save your work on, or of your old school thumb drives. Totally agree. Backing up is going to be your best friend. I know a lot of authors that will write in Google Docs or whatever so that it's on the cloud, it's on the net. If you have an issue, it's still there, it's salvageable. I'm super, super old school. I'm a Word girl. I've even tried like Scrivener and stuff, and I just have a hard time with it. So I even though I do back up, this again was one of those cases where it was on the old laptop, I transferred it, it didn't transfer the way it was supposed to. So That's my own issue. I feel so bad. And everybody's like, oh, maybe we can recover it. And I'm like, I love your enthusiasm. I promise I tried. I tried to recover it for about an hour and a half. And then I sobbed for a little while. I ate some cookies. I put up my vision board. I got some new curtains for my office. And then I felt better about life. Kathy Lynn says she totally goes through the same thing with the voices. It sounds psychotic. But most authors will tell you that they have characters, stories, plots sort of constantly revolving in their head, and if you miss the opportunity to listen to one and to get it down on paper on the computer, it can go away, and then you can struggle later to be like, where is that voice again? How do I get that voice out? Again, this is something I did a blog post about recently, sort of following the muse, finding your inspiration. You have to figure out what works for you, what gets those individual voices talking, and then go for it. For me, I decided to take Tuesday and reread all the other hacker books, just so I could kind of get back into the voices of my characters and what was going on. So I sat down and reread, and I have to tell you, I forgot how much I enjoy those books. There's a reason that it is probably going to be my longest running series, because it is one of my favorite series. It's one of my favorite characters. It's so fun for me to see this girl who was sort of started off in the first book as a very young, not necessarily naive, like she's always been very savvy, but this sort of, young character, and seeing her develop into this young woman who is now on the cusp of adulthood, and she's out on her own, and she's, got this more complicated job, and her life is just sort of evolving the way any normal human's life would as they, get older and grow and do new things and meet new people. Jan says she loved The Hackers. They rocked. I love you, Jan. The Hacker books are probably some of my favorites. Next to Losing Logan, I think the Hacker books are my only real contemporary series. And it's fun because stepping out of fantasy and historical and back into something more contemporary is like, it's almost, it's not easier to write, but it's easier to connect with, because you can just call a toaster a toaster. You don't have to explain what a toaster looked like in 1700s. You don't have to try and describe a steampunk toaster or any of these things. You can just sort of let it go a little bit. And also the benefit of going into book 4 as opposed to going into book 1, like of the New Queen series, is that the world is established, the characters are established, there's a little bit of backfilling that you have to do, but it's not bad. You can really just sort of hit the ground running, which is my very favorite thing to do when I'm writing a book. As a matter of fact, a lot of times, even when I'm starting a new book, I will sort of start writing somewhere near the middle of the book, and then backfill later as I go and sort of have to do the world building and the developing and stuff. Katie says she loved Who She Became in the last book. You're gonna die. I love that the new book is so much fun. I am actually have a meeting today with some consultants of mine who help me with terminology and plotting ideas and all of those things, which is great. Dude, I can't tell you how valuable this information has been to me going through this series, because I am roadkill on the information superhighway. I accidentally did something on my computer that I like had Facebook up, and then like I hit a button wrong, and like this whole sidebar of like programming nonsense came up, and I was like, what did I just do? And it's terrifying to me. So it helps to have these consultants that can come in, and I'll be like, okay, here's the situation, how would we handle this, or what's the terminology for doing this, and they walk me through it, because they're delightful human beings, and I owe them so much. Jan says she's excited for that one coming out. Me too! It's funny, so I'm supposed to be turning in the Queen book soon, but as I said, I've got to take some time between it and going back on revisions, and so I'm gonna hand my publisher the 4th Hacker book and be like, please don't kill me, because like it's not even on a schedule till like the fall. But they're fairly tolerant of my nonsense, thankfully. I call them all the time and I'm like, question, can I put this, that, or the other in this book, and they'll be like, just go for it, Sherry, just do whatever you're gonna do. Like, we don't even care anymore. If it's a problem, we'll deal with it later. So they're very tolerant of my nonsense. She says that wasn't cryptic about your associates at all. I'm not gonna say anything that could incriminate anyone, so I'm just gonna say that they're my technical consultants on the Hacker books, and I think that's a great way to put it. They're my technical consultants. And best part, when I meet with them, I get to write it off as a tax expense. Because it's work. Working lunches are the best. It's funny, I actually, again, did a blog post recently repost about authors and taxes. We're getting into tax season, and it's always fun to see. So I get my 1099s from my publishing houses, and so I get one 1099 that's like huge. And I'm like, oh, I owe so much money. Like, it's like ridiculous how much money I owe in taxes. And then I have this one publishing house that's got, it was my first publishing house, and they have some of my like small nothing books that don't sell and are like way old and crazy. And so like I'll open up that 1099 and it's like $5. And I'm like, that's right. So it's interesting to see how I've grown with my different publishing houses over the year. You know, I get my 1099s and I can sort of say like, okay, so that was my first series and this is my second series and these are all my other series. And I can definitely tell that I'm progressing as an author because they keep, you know, sort of doing the can you hear me now bar thing, which is fun. If you're curious though, if you're about to do your author taxes and you don't know what you're doing, head over to my website, sherrypickler.com. Check out the tax blog. It'll give you the basics. It's really helpful for those going into their first year of, you know, taxes as an author. So good stuff happening all over the place. I think that's about it. This week again has been fairly just me licking my wounds after the colossal hacker loss of 2017, which is what I'm going to call it, and then sort of restarting and replotting. And I sort of remember where we were going with the plot. For some reason, I thought it would be a great idea to keep the actual, like, outline in the document to refer back to, which was stupid because then when I lost the document, I also lost the outline for the book. Yay. Sabrina says, first year of taxes here, I'll be sure to check it out. Yeah, check it out. It'll help you out a lot. When I did my first taxes, I was sort of surprised at how much I could deduct from my taxes. And there's like laws about, you know, whether you're a sole proprietor or LLC, and it gets a little complicated, but realistically, it's good to know going in what you can save. If you're ever curious, just save all your receipts for everything. A lot of it can be claimed. And if you're writing as a business and you take a loss in your first year, you can actually deduct the loss against your other income that you're bringing in. So that's really helpful going in. Thomas says, good job staying motivated. Thank you. It's really easy to be motivated when you have deadlines. It's really easy to try and, you know, really hone your self-focus when you have deadlines. Though I will say, when I'm not on deadline or when I'm procrastinating something, that's when I tend to get my very best book ideas. They say that a relaxed brain is more creative, which is why you get all your good ideas like in the shower or right before bed, because as your brain relaxes, you get more creative. Which is why sometimes, you know, 5 coffees a day and 3 Monster Energy drinks is not the best way to write a book, because your brain is wired, and while you may be able to pound out more words, it sort of, you know, sucks out a little bit of that creative process, I think. Sharon says, so far her experiences outweigh her income. Not a surprise. Not sure what it says about my success as an author. If I don't make money in the next couple of years, the IRS is going to classify it as a hobby. That is absolutely true. There's only so many years that you can take that loss in your income. However, they won't necessarily classify it as a hobby. You can keep it as your business. You just can't deduct then anything you lose from the taxes. They won't classify it as a hobby. It'll still be a business, because just like if you open a paint store, maybe you take a loss in that paint store 5 years in a row. There's only so many years so that you can deduct the loss against your other income. So they'll treat it as a hobby, but they won't necessarily, it's not like they're going to take your business away or anything like that. So just kind of be aware. That's why I tell authors too, you know, those startup years, the years when you buy your first computer, when you set up your office, when you do your domain and your website for the first time, those are a lot of those upfront expenses, and you can parse them out over time. And if you're good at, you know, doing that sort of thing, that's a great way to do it. Take a loss your first couple years if you can. Take that loss while you can claim it against your other income while you're starting out. It will help you in the long run. It's really not, it's not to say that you're not good at what you're doing or you're not going to be successful. I took a loss my first 3 years. I think most authors do. It is incredibly difficult to make a living as a writer. It is nigh impossible to make a living wage. Some of the best authors that I know are, you know, have 36 books out and are making about as much as a full-time Taco Bell employee. It's just hard. When you look at the percentages of what an author makes, If your ebook is $3.99, you're making maybe 25% of 70%. It's nothing. You're making a quarter a book on print sales. Maybe you get 75 cents a copy if you're lucky. It's the sheer volume of books that you have to sell in order to make real money as an author startles most people, which is why so many people are moving towards self-publishing, because then instead of taking 25% of 70%, they just get 70%. Yeah, there's more upfront costs and there's other things you have to worry about, and distribution is way different, but you know, it's so hard to make a living as an author. Even I had a discussion with my agent a little while ago about like author advances with traditional publishers. A $30,000 advance for an author on a book sounds like, oh my god, that's great money for this book. You don't get it all at once. It's parceled out over the course of a year to 2 years, and it's 30%, or it's $30,000 of which your agent gets a huge chunk, which a huge chunk has to be taken out for taxes, and you're lucky at that point if you're clearing 10 grand a year. So if you sell a $30,000 book once a year, congratulations, you've made $10,000. It's still below the poverty line. It's still so little actual money. It's hard to wrap your head around it. And it's hard to see those numbers. It's hard to see those $5 1099s come in and feel like you're successful. That's why you really can't, as an author, judge your success based on your income. That sounds terrible, and it's one of the few fields that's like that. But you can't. You can't say, oh, I have to make X amount of money or I'm not a real author. It's not the case. It's not the case. Your success is 100% based on you and how you feel about it and if you feel successful. I feel more successful when I have a random stranger message me on Facebook and tell me they loved my book than any check has ever made me feel successful. Sharon says, of course it would be huge compared to what I've made so far. It feels that way. It really does. But I will say, once you've got a good number of books under your belt that are selling decent, they don't have to be bestsellers, but if they're selling decent, then you're still making, eventually, that living wage. I just got to that point last year where I was making enough that, like, I went and got a new car, and my income now covers, like, my car payment and a little bit of my bills, and I'm actually making a living wage as an author. It's still a pittance compared to what other people make. I would probably make more as a manager at Sears. I'm not gonna lie. But that's not how I judge my success as an author. And it's not how you should be judging your success as an author. And keep in mind, too, that you can't compare where you are in your journey to anyone else. You can't say, oh, well, I only sold, $300 worth of books in this whole quarter, and here's author XYZ who's selling 3 million copies. You can't do that. It's not only detrimental to your creative process, but it is so bad for your emotional well-being. You cannot compare yourself to anybody else. You can't say, well, I've been doing this 10 years and she's been doing it 6 months. She doesn't deserve the same success as me. It's crap. The only person that can judge your success is you. You decide if you feel like a success or not. You decide if it's worth your time, if it's worth your energy, because at the end of the day, that's all that matters. The bestseller lists don't matter. Are they nice? They're icing. They're great. But at the end of the day, that's not what makes you successful. So that's just my personal opinion on it. And again, there's going to be many, many things over the course of your career that will take you on this weird roller coaster ride of, oh, this is the best job ever. Oh, this is the worst job ever. Oh, people love me. Oh, people hate me. Oh, I love this book. Oh, I hate this book. It's all in your head. It's all in your head. And so that's the only thing that matters. Be humble, but, know that you're the only one that can judge your success. You. And on that note, I think I'm going to take off. Sharon says, yes, I don't follow my sales at all. Good. I mean, sales numbers are, it's important to know where your book's at, but don't let it, be the be all and end all in your head. I tell authors all the time, stay the hell off of Goodreads. Goodreads isn't for authors. The only thing authors get from Goodreads is a complex. Stay off of Goodreads, because it doesn't matter if your book has 5 million 5-star reviews or 50 1-star reviews. The only ones you're going to count are the ones that are negative, because those are the ones that get stuck in your head. So just know that you guys are great, and thank you for joining me today, and I hope this has been at least a little bit helpful. And good luck with everything. I'll talk to you guys next week. And if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments even after the video, and I'll try and get to them next week. I love you guys. Have a great day. Bye.